Breaking tonight, Rudy Giuliani joins me on set in just a moment after former CIA Director John Brennan threatens to sue the president for taking away his security clearance.
If that's the price we're going to pay to prevent Donald Trump from doing this against other people, to me it's a small price to pay. So I am going to do whatever I can personally to try to prevent these abuses in the future. And if it means going to court, I will do that.
And we know that Mr. Trump basically said, bring it on. And here is Rudy Giuliani tweeting just a short time ago to John Brennan. Today, President Trump granted our request, Jay Sekulow and me, to handle your case. After threatening, if you don't, it would be just like Obama's red lines. Come on, John. You're not a blowhard. Joining me now exclusively, the man laughing in the background, the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Good to have you here, sir. So is this going to be a lawsuit? We're going to see this happen?
Well, you got to have some fun, Martha. I actually want to demonstrate that probably his word isn't worth anything, just like the red lines in Syria weren't worth anything and America's honor was imperiled. He's not going to bring that lawsuit. And he's not going to bring it, first of all, because no reputable lawyer will bring it. There's nothing to sue over. It's a privilege. And it's a privilege long extended. What reason does he have to have security clearance? The only reason you would have it as an ex-official is if the government was going to call upon you for information. Well,
this government's not calling on John Brennan anytime soon.
I don't think many governments would, but the Obama government. I mean, John Brennan was not a particularly distinguished anything. He was a political operative. He hasn't been an intelligence officer in a long time. He's been a political hitman. His language demonstrates that. The president committed treason? Treason? Come on. So that's a professional intelligence officer? No, that's a political whatever you want to call it.
I thought it was interesting in his op-ed, which was several days ago, he basically said that he and James Comey would sit around and talk about the fact that the Russians were meddling in the summer of 2016. They discussed it with each other, but then he confirmed it when he read news reports in the paper. And I'm thinking, really? So the head of the CIA and the head of the FBI were discussing this, but then they confirmed it when the stories were written about it in the newspaper.
If I were President Obama and they hacked into our election, and Comey and Brennan were the guys in charge, they'd have been fired. I mean, God, fired guys.
It would have been helpful if maybe they shared some of that information.
How about some accountability? The crime here, hacking, happened under the Obama administration. The crime here is not the distribution of the information. A lot of that's protected by the First Amendment. Like all the newspapers printed it. Nobody's prosecuting them. The crime was hacking. That happened under Obama. And he's responsible for it, for not keeping up the guard of this country. Now, it's not Obama's fault. It's the people who work for him.
And the president said clearly back then that he wasn't worried that there would be any impact from anything like that on the United States elections. He called them foolproof. But I want to get your response to this, because you're getting a lot of critics who are jumping all over you for what you said yesterday morning on Meet the Press. Here's a little reminder.
And when you tell me that, he should testify because he's going to tell the truth and he shouldn't worry, well, that's so silly, because it's somebody's version of the truth, not the truth. He didn't have a conversation
truth is
about...
truth. I don't mean to...
And you went on to say that truth is not truth in the end of that soundbite. What did you mean by that?
Well, very simple. I mean, and then you have to play the rest of it. I'm talking about this particular situation. One person says the Flynn conversation took place. The other person says the Flynn conversation didn't take place. What's the truth? You tell me how you figure out the truth.
Well, it either did or it didn't.
Well,
I mean,
but it's like the tree falling in the forest. Did anybody hear it? I mean, how do we know what the truth is?
So you're talking about whether or not the president asked James Comey to go easy on Michael Flynn.
Because
James Comey says he did, and the president says he didn't.
That's right. And they will possibly charge him with perjury should he give that answer. That's why I'm saying in situations like this, to prosecutors, the truth is relative. And it's not absolute, like some philosophical concept. Maybe through their prejudices, the New York Times and Chuck Todd can figure out the truth, that Comey's telling the truth, but I can't. And I believe the president's telling the truth.
But let me just bring this up, because it goes to the same point in terms of whether or not the president, Don McGahn, who the story obviously that everybody's read over the weekend about the 30 hours of testimony that he gave to the special counsel. Now, one of the issues that they are apparently interested in is whether or not he and the president sort of, had an active back and forth over whether or not he should fire Mueller in the summer.
Right.
Now, is discussing that with Don McGahn illegal?
Nope.
Is asking his White House counsel
No.
advice on whether or not he should fire?
Let's just say again, the president says that we didn't discuss it. And Don McGahn says we did. It's not illegal to have discussed it, so there'd be no reason for the president to lie. That's just his recollection. But if you have a prosecutor that's out to get you and wants to select the truth in the way Chuck Todd thinks you can just determine the truth like that.
Yeah, but I'm saying, either it was discussed or it wasn't discussed. I think the two different people in the room can argue over what they each meant, right?
The only way you will know if it's discussed or not discussed is if there was another witness or a tape recording. If it's just two people, you don't know except based on the credibility of those two people.
All right, here's what the president just said, and it was sort of a passing comment that he made to Reuters, so it's a little bit broken up, but we're going to put it up on the screen with regard to whether or not he would speak to Robert Mueller. He says, I've decided to stay out. Now, I don't have to stay out, as you know. I can go in, and I could do whatever. I could run it if I want, he says. And he goes on to say to decline whether or not he will do an interview with Mueller's team. You're advising him not to do that, clearly.
Well, first of all, I haven't finally advised him, nor has Jay. We have some time for that. Not much, I hope, because I hope they get this over. They've kept us waiting 2 weeks now. I mean, they're trying to do this expeditiously. Give me a break. They're trying to run it right into the election. And if that's their strategy, the American people really have to learn that. I mean, they're trying to do the same thing Comey did. They're trying to become judge and jury of the 2018 elections. That is a tragedy with a phony investigation like this. They simply don't have any evidence of collusion. And they have no evidence of obstruction other than their version of the truth, which is the reason why I made that comment. And Chuck Todd fell for it because he's a part of it. He's not really an objective reporter. His anger and distaste of the president is palpable.
Wow.
He interrupted every answer that I gave. He interrupted immediately with the talking points for the other side. Go listen to the interview.
I did. I mean, obviously, the question of collusion and whether or not there's conspiracy is what would really be a crime there, right?
Right.
And
now, how can the following be obstruction? Even if Trump said it, which he didn't. And every time I do this, people like to get confused. They pretend they're confused. The conversation didn't take place. But if it took place the way Comey said, the president said to him, I hope you will drop it or give him a break. Hope are not words of obstruction. I will kill you if you don't. I'll take your money away. I will threaten your children. I will take away your job. Those are words of threat. We can't find an obstruction case in 150 years that uses the words, I hope you will do what I'm asking you.
All right. Let me ask you
That's why they're stretching so far beyond the existing law, and that's why the president says this is a setup and a phony investigation.
You asked for Mueller to be done with his report in time for the election. Do you think that will happen? You don't think that will happen?
I don't. It could surprise me, and if he does, I will say that he did the right thing. At one point in the one meeting I had with them, they said they didn't want to repeat the mistakes that Comey made, and this is before Horowitz had issued.
What do you think you meant by that?
I think, I said to them sarcastically, kind of like I do with Brennan today. He said, well, what kind of questioning would you agree to? I said, well, I'd kind of like to get the Hillary Clinton treatment. You give us the questions in advance. It's not under oath. You don't keep a Q&A. We just do like a little report. And by the way, you write the report that I'm innocent before you even question me. You give me one of those, and I could say yes to that. So they said, well, we don't want to do it like Comey did it. He's being criticized for that. So he was criticized for trying to affect the 2016 election. They shouldn't want to be criticized for trying to affect the 2018 election.
So you have never come to, in the conversations that you're discussing, you've never come to a point where you've said to them, that sounds fair. I mean, have you ever had any common ground on grounds for an interview?
I don't have the conversations, the day-to-day conversation with him. Jane Resnick does. You'd have to ask her. I mean, there are some points on which they have agreed, okay, but not on the overall scope of the interview.
I want to hear one more.
Like they agreed after 2 days that they can't indict the president, but it took them 2 days to agree to that. even though it's written right down in the Justice Department.
I mean, all he can do is write a report.
That's right.
He's going to write his report. It's probably, in some ways, going to be like Comey's report, where he got up and explained his findings in the Hillary Clinton and shook his fist at her a little bit, maybe, and was really unable to do anything beyond that. But I want to ask you one more question, because Michael Cohen, we're all watching Paul Manafort's trial, and they're now past day 3. They're not going to have any decision on that tonight. Now, the latest is that Michael Cohen is likely to be charged by the end of the month with tax and bank crimes, evasion. The quote from the New York Times, let's put this up on the screen. Federal authorities are investigating whether President Trump's former personal lawyer and fixer, Michael D. Cohen, committed bank and tax fraud. Any criminal charges against Mr. Cohen would deal a significant blow to the president. Would it?
No, no. You know what it would do? It would kind of indicate they don't want his cooperation, or they don't think he's telling the truth right now. Because you don't, if you've got a good working relationship with a person who's going to be your witness, you don't just bang them with an indictment. You work out a charge so that they can plead and get a break. So they obviously are not satisfied with Cohen at this point, if they hit him with this. Now, this is all rumor. If he gets indicted for something that has nothing to do with the president, well, I feel sorry for Michael, although I don't know how sorry I feel for him, because he was tape recording the world and deceiving them, including his client. But it has nothing to do with us. Just like Paul Manafort's case has nothing to do with us.
But he could argue for leniency against him if he offers up more details on President Trump or the family. That's what's being suggested in these stories.
Right. Well, obviously, they're not satisfied with what he's giving them right now. If he's giving them anything at all right now. I mean, he leaked a lot of stuff. It turned out to backfire. He leaked that conversation with the president, perfectly innocent conversation. His conversation with Cuomo supports the president's statements about McDougal 100%. The other tapes that haven't been heard yet also support what the president said. So for him to offer some kind of evidence against the president, he would have to contradict what he said on tape to many reporters.
All right, before I let you go, I just have one more question about Don McGahn. The reporting is that the president, the administration, never asked him. So what did you all talk about in there for 30 hours? Have they asked him that now?
Who asked him that?
Has the president asked Don McGahn, what did you talk about for 30 hours?
What we try to do in this situation is we debrief each other, because there's joint defense. And at the time, John Dowd got a complete version of what McGahn said during that period of time. John, of course, because of what happened over the weekend, went through it thoroughly. I've been on the phone with him for hours and gone over it with him. When this first came out, I didn't know the details of what McGahn said. Now I do. Here's the most important thing. I knew not to worry about it, because if the president had said anything criminal to the counsel of the White House, McGahn wouldn't be there now. McGahn, as a matter of legal ethics and possibly even law, would have to quit. And he's a very ethical guy. I mean, he's a very careful guy. So I can't imagine sitting around the White House for 6 months with a president who he thinks committed a federal crime. It would be outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, he said in part of that piece, it's way down in the piece, but he said that he doesn't think that the president stepped outside his authority in any way.
It's way down the piece because it's the New York Times, and they hide the lead, which is he spoke for 2.5 days and didn't offer anything illegal. Isn't this about legal or illegal? It's not about politically correct or incorrect. It's just like the Times wrote that Cohen is the president's lawyer and fixer. Well, the president's never said he's his fixer. Cohen went around saying that. Cohen went around saying, I'm Ray Donovan. If people know who Ray Donovan is, he's a character on the very good, watch it if you, but he is a fixer. But I don't think Cohen ever killed anybody. Ray Donovan killed a few people.
Well, let's hope not. Let's hope not. Thank you very much.
Right.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I know you're headed to Scotland, so we wish you well on your trip, and we thank you for making some time for us before you head out of town.